I want to talk today about conflict in marriages. There's a lot of conflict that is happening in marriages. How can self-knowing help these couples during these conflicts?
Lot of fundamental work has to be done, and which of course we are not doing, and then we want results overnight, which is very absurd. So I've got to do a lot of groundwork. Now, in a partnership or relationship between two people, the relationship will endure only if A is sensitive to B and B is reciprocally sensitive to A. So which means you must have a basic understanding of what my wife is actually, what is the self in my wife looking for in life.
But initially in couples in marriages, the initial 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, 1 year seem to be going fine. Seem to be there could be, I don't know what we can call as understanding. They say that we have understanding of each other.
No.
Right? In 6 months and 1 year. But when the actual challenge comes, the whole perception is shifted in that couple's relationship. So when you say one has to understand the other, what does that entail? How does self-knowing fit into that?
You've got to first of all know yourself.
Know yourself.
Know yourself. And it's like you, the energy of yourself, which is in that mental and emotional space. There is a moving energy, very alive energy. That energy can either be calm and peaceful and aware, or that energy can be chaotic and can be very aggressive.
Yes.
There are two possibilities, extreme opposites of each other.
Right.
So now, for a relationship to go well, I must be sufficiently sensitive to what the other person is looking for, and I must not trample on the other person, and must be sensitive and see how as a partner, how as a husband or how as a wife, I may help the other person to achieve that fulfillment which that self is looking for.
So before we really help somebody or understand someone, we have to, what you're saying is in self-knowing, we need to really understand ourselves.
Very important.
We need to see how we are handling that relationship or how we are feeling in that relationship.
Independent of that relationship, the moving energy of yourself inside in the mental and emotional space, that should have quieted down. And become calm and peaceful, so that you already have peace in your heart to start with.
Right.
As you step into married life, by marrying, you didn't get that peace. No.
Right.
This peace is prior to married life. That's the right foundation. Now you see very often in society that people are creating the edifice or the structure called married life on very wrong foundations.
So not only one has to understand oneself, but also one has to be peace with oneself.
To begin with, only then you can make that a beautiful partnership, a very harmonious partnership, which can be fruitful, which can be happy for both of you. And if both of you are happy, your respective families are going to be happy, and society is going to be happy.
So when I am looking into myself and then I am feeling peace with myself, but I don't like what I see in the other person, that creates a conflict also.
Of course.
In that marriage relationship.
Of course. And either you have to be so magnanimous that you're not going to sit in a chair of judgment and pass a judgment on the other person, saying that is ugly and so on. And you must see the fault in the other person, which fault you're perceiving, to be a human weakness which is universal in nature. Can you see that?
So can you accept it?
Can you accept it?
Can you accept
that's
the
a
other
huge
person
step
for what they are?
That calls for maturity.
Right.
And I would say, I was saying in a very jocular way to a friend of mine some years ago that, I mean, it's rather rude to say that, but I said it all the same. I said, if I were the Prime Minister, I will not give a no objection certificate for people to marry, because I'll give that certificate only for very mature people, who are capable of relating to each other nicely, harmoniously, that everybody is not fit.
Right. Because at least in India, the whole concept of marriage is very different from the Western concept of marriage.
Well, in the West, what's happened is, in pockets of the West, where the Christian religion still has a good influence on the population,
yes,
there the institution of marriage, I think, is in a good shape.
In a good shape, yeah. It is, yeah.
But in modern secular West,
yes,
where religion has been kicked off,
yes,
there I think marriage is already broken down. It's not a question of that it's going to break down in the morrow. It's already broken down. And even where a marriage is prevailing, it is there, then you can see that there's tremendous amount of conflict.
Conflict is there.
And but it is still, the fort is held together for various reasons. It's not a happy fort.
So one has to start with oneself, not only knowing oneself, but also finding peace within oneself, and then wanting and trying to understand the other person, not only just understanding, but whatever you see in the other person, to be able to accept the other person as they are.
As they are, that's one thing. And the vow of married life, I don't know about the Christian vow, but I can tell you about the Hindu vow: to suffer together, to enjoy together. Now, to suffer together. Now we forget this.
Yeah,
because if one partner gets suffering, the other person has to be in emotional sync with that person, and you have to suffer together. You've got to share the sorrow.
Yes.
Not give you a divorce notice. The moment you have a problem, I give you a divorce notice and I run away. No. That's very immature, and that's very unspiritual.
And there is also so much of domination that goes on in a relationship, in a married relationship.
Very true. Very shameful, very ugly. Very shameful, very ugly.
Because that is, again, there is no wanting to dominate the other person, wanting to control the other person, not willing to accept yourself for who you are, and not understanding the other person also. That is also can create that conflict.
Absolutely. See, Krishnamurti has said something extraordinary. He said, if you have any outer conflict, be it with your brother, be it with your business associate, be it with your husband, be it with your wife, it is actually a reflection of a conflict which has been unresolved within yourself. Has to go there.
So that is why the first important step is to really start with oneself.
Yeah.
Not just knowing oneself, understanding oneself, but finding that peace within oneself.
You have to find it, because only then you are going to be a good citizen. You are going to be a good family man, and you're going to be a good human being. Now, how do you become a good husband and a good wife without being a good human being?
Yes.
Fundamental question.
Fundamental.
You have to be a good human being first. And nobody seems to realize this.
Right.
And everybody is talking of, my husband loves me, I love my husband. What's all this talk?
Right. Yes. And also the dependence is a lot on the other person. Psychological dependence is also there.
That's a huge thing in itself.
And that also creates conflicts in relationships.
If the dependence is there, assume that the psychological dependence is there, that may very often come from the way macrocosmic society is structured. Now, the way our society works, there is male domination. And women are beaten down. Whether in Islamic society or Christian society or Hindu society, women have a disadvantage in that there's a very subtle form of domination in the denial of freedom to them, in the denial of rights to them, in the denial of a voice to them.
Right.
And you have to give that voice. And humanity is not mature enough to grant women that freedom to which they're as much entitled as men are entitled.
Yes. Even in the West, I think, even though women are more independent, more all those things, still the domination of men is there in some relationships. I have observed that with women.
Very true.
They struggle with it. It affects their self-esteem also in that process.
Very true, very true. That's a huge problem in itself. The problem of freedom for women, and how do societies and families make women happy?
Happy.
Very, very important. We are not addressing these problems. We are addressing milder problems, like we have to give voting rights to women.
Right.
We have to give the right to education. We've got to give that to women. But that's of a lesser magnitude than treating them as an equal in married life, listening to the wife. Listening to the wife and seeing what she wants to do in her life and helping her to go towards that fulfillment.
Yes.
That's a huge thing. We have got to do that. And without that, our lives are not going to be happy.
Happy, yes. This is very important. This conflict is a huge factor in couples, especially in the West. They are happy for 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, even if they're not married, just couples and just being partners, dating each other or whatever for 2 years, 3 years. There is a huge conflict within that relationship.
Definitely.
And they're struggling to make amends in that and understand
those won't
that
work. Those are all piecemeal solutions.
Right.
They're not going to work.
Right.
Unless and until you become self-knowing. There is no real solution in sight.
Yes. Thank you for that.